Hello, and welcome to True Horrors with Meg and Rachel. Every week we discuss a horror film and the true stories that inspired, influenced, or bear striking resemblance to them. Be warned for spoilers and adult themes. I'm Meg.
And I'm Rachel.
And this is True Horrors. Episode 10, everyone.
Was it really? What a blur.
Wow. Match my energy.
I'm sorry. What a blur this has been.
I know.
Episode 10.
Which is really exciting. Episode 10, season 2. So we're nearing our conclusion. We did the original Amityville Horror, another 1970s classic that I don't understand.
But much better than the other 70s classics.
Oh, much better. Much
Way
better. But I still was like, there were parts where I was like, I mean, I guess I'm comparing this to, if this is the OG, this is the mother of all haunted house movies, then I would say The Conjuring perfected it.
Yeah.
So it took a lot. I can see those, it's like the I'm you but stronger meme.
I think it's funny that you say that, because the main thing that I was struck by watching this was how similar it is to The Conjuring and The Exorcist in really specific ways. And I don't necessarily mean that the people who wrote the books about the Amityville Horror and The Conjuring were recycling material. I know they're very controversial figures. That's not what I'm trying to get into right now. But just in the way that genres build on each other. Because The Exorcist had a lot of the same players. It had the family, an old priest, a young priest, and a cop who is inexplicably around and doesn't seem to be helping in any way. And then The Conjuring just had a lot of similar elements story-wise. It goes back to Salem and yada yada yada. And I just thought it was really interesting.
Yeah, definitely. I definitely felt like the priests and the cop had a lot less of a role of any importance than they do in The Conjuring or The Exorcist. I mean, The Warrens aren't priests,
right?
But they are, exorcising figures, because the thing is they don't actually solve anything in this movie.
Right.
So that's a huge thing. Why does the intro of the Amityville Horror sound like the intro from Rosemary's Baby?
I don't know. I am so sick of these intros of children singing Rosemary's Baby isn't a child singing. It's an adult woman singing, but still, it's the same energy. And there have just been so many of those that we've watched, and I'm sick of it.
No, I don't love the cuts when they're going through the house to the actual murder. They're a little choppy for me, but I do like what they're trying to do.
That's funny, because I wrote, did they think we'd forget the opening scene that happened 2 minutes ago?
Yes. Also, as always, I did the math. So the house cost $80,000. Which would have been $393,869 today. But because he at one point said what the house was really worth.
Right.
And that was 100 and something. And that would be $615,500. So, I mean, it was a 5-bedroom farmhouse or something crazy.
I honestly even think that's lowballing it, because it's a giant house. There's a shed on the property. There's a friggin' boathouse with a dock. And we don't really know how big the land is. And it's in New York. It's on Long Island. I think that's lowballing.
No, I agree. I mean, nowadays it's worth 1.2 million.
Yeah, that's
spoiler alert.
That sounds right.
They do know. Also, I don't care if you believe in ghosts. I don't want to live in a murder house.
No. Houses do have memories. And they're the memories that you bring to them, knowing that it's a murder house.
Also, it's not a murder that occurred. The thing with The Conjuring is that everything that makes The Conjuring spooky, that house supposedly happened, 100 years ago or something like that. This is, people are alive who investigated that crime was a year ago, 13 months. That's insane to move into a house where a year ago someone murdered their family.
They just got the blood off the walls and you are moving in.
No, it's crazy. That's so crazy to me to move into a house, especially because it's not even a person died. It's not even like one person was murdered. A whole family, including children, were viciously gunned down. And it's like, I'm going to put my kids in these rooms. Like, and when she's like, you can have any of the furniture, I was like, miss me with that bullshit.
And under different circumstances, I'd be thrilled because I love other people's junk, but not murderers' junk.
I feel like you said something very similar when we watched The Conjuring and they kicked open that basement door and had all that stuff in it. And you were like, I'm very torn because this is my dream, but demons.
Yes, I did. I had a pro and con list.
Yes, that was it. That real estate agent knows this place is haunted. Like, that's definitely, like, you can tell from her reaction the whole time. Like, she knows that there's something wrong with this place. She just nopes out of there.
She does. I mean, wouldn't you?
Also, this priest just walking into the house. Yes. Again, I guess he's their friend, but like on the heels of seeing Texas Chainsaw Massacre, I'm like, why are people just walking into each other's houses?
Apparently that's what you did in the 70s, in the mid 70s. This came out in 79, but it took place in 75. So.
And then he just starts doing that, which like they wanted the house to be exorcised, but it's like he just does it without any, like that whole part of it I found really annoying because like there seemed to be some sort of, they wanted some added suspense with the idea that they didn't know he was there and they didn't really know what was happening with him and the phone never works. And I just found it all really annoying because I was like, dude, if you had gone around back and been like, hey guys, I'm going to do this now, like the whole thing would have been different. It's just very
because he knows
weird.
Where they are. He sees them out the window. Also, it's weird to me that it takes her, I guess it doesn't, because they show you how long, like it's only like, this takes place over like 2 or 3 weeks, but it takes
28 days.
28 days. Okay. It takes her a really long time to just go try to visit the priest. If like, since again, the phone never works, he called and he was clearly trying to tell her something important. Like, why didn't she just go visit him then?
Also, they're like family friends. Like there was a lot of things that were very like weird about what she did or didn't do. I hated the flies. I hated the door. At one point, I wasn't sure if they knew the priest. And I was like, is he just doing this on the sly because he knows there's something wrong with the house? Also, it's very clearly the same lamp that one of the children grabbed as they were dying that they kept. And I'm just like, that's bad vibes. Even if you don't believe in ghosts, that's bad vibes.
The thing is, didn't it break? I'm pretty sure like when the lamp fell, it broke, didn't it? So they had to glue it back together.
You didn't see if it broke. You didn't even see it fall. You just saw him reaching for it. Like, and it looked like it was going to fall, but we never saw it like break.
We never saw it hit? Okay.
No. Which like I would also have assumed it broke.
Right.
Like the lamp's a weird choice to be the thing that they still have. It's also a weird choice to do half naked ballet, especially when we haven't established that you're like a ballerina or anything.
Yes. And it literally never comes up again. Also, I made a lot of flowers in the attic jokes while watching this, and that ballet scene did not help.
No, when they were going to the door, I was like, is it possible this is the music from the original Flowers in the Attic? Like, is it possible this is that music from when they're doing shots of the attic that are like before the kids are in it? Is it possible?
It could be. Because, there's a point where the real estate agent says, oh, you could turn this into a playroom or a bedroom. And I was like, a playroom for your secret children so that you can get inheritance. And then, they do. They when they're having sex in the bedroom on the floor and the door opens, I'm like, God, this is just all the Flowers in the Attic vibes. Granted, that's from later on in the series. That's more of a deep cut, but
I found it all really uncomfortable when the possession started changing his personality because like I think what made it most uncomfortable was that she wasn't immediately like, why are you behaving this way? And I was just like, what is your past relationship history like, honey? Because like he was a completely different man until like 14 seconds ago. And like you aren't like, what the actual fuck? Like it just like it seemed like the ghosts were able to like tap into a lot of her own insecurity about this man marrying her and taking on her 3 kids and stuff and like all of this that like she was willing to accept a lot of bullshit where it's like he has never shown any signs of this. Like you need to figure something the fuck out. Get there faster.
So much faster.
I was a kid with imaginary friends, by the way, and every time that's a plot device, I'm just like, I was friends. I had imaginary friends. I just have imaginary friends.
One of my favorite things about this movie is that the first time it comes up, they play it completely straight. Like, oh, it's her imaginary friend because kids have imaginary friends. And then it just like slowly gets creepier and creepier to the point where like now kid hasn't, like they move into a murder house and the kid has an imaginary friend is like shorthand at this point.
Yes.
But doing it for the first time and playing it straight was a really good call.
I didn't know if it was a demon. I mean, it turns out that what they're saying is in the house is the actual devil, like a portal to hell. Yes. But I was just like, he seems to, like, this demon seems to have a lot of power because they usually don't have power outside the house, but he's able to crash the car.
Yeah.
And I was really surprised by that.
Yes. I was, speaking of the portal to hell, I was really surprised when they were told to find the well and cover it because it's the gateway to hell, that they didn't look for a well on their property and cover it. Like, I'm sorry, but if something that weird happens, like, you have to at least entertain the possibility.
Yeah.
Look for a well.
100%. Also, like, I don't understand why the devil was like, I'm going to steal the money to the caterer.
Yes!
Like, what was the point?
Why?
Like,
what are you going to do with it?
Like, what a dick. Because it's also like, it's not like that money was the dad's, was George's. Mm-hmm. So it's like, they're trying to make him seem crazy. And also it was like really suspicious because you and both of them like saw him put the money directly into his coat and then it was gone. So that was like real creepy.
Mm-hmm. Hated it.
Not as much as I hated her just staring while the babysitter screamed for help. Now that I really hated.
Yeah, that was awful. Jody wouldn't let me. Okay. Jody's a bitch. Not in a
but
good
that
way.
Is the point where as a parent, like there's either one of two things happening. Either your daughter needs to go see a specialist or there is a demon because she... like the babysitter's knuckles are bloody. It's not like that's something that's like an illusion they erase. Like this girl was literally beating the door so much her hands are bloody and your daughter would not open it. Like, so either there's a demon preventing her from doing it or she needs some serious help.
Yes. Also, the door doesn't lock. So like, what the hell was keeping the door closed? Like that's another, like they specifically say the door doesn't have a lock on it. So like either she was holding the door closed or a demon is doing it. Mm-hmm. Creepy. Hate it.
Oh, also talk about somebody who I wanted to like get bitch slapped by a demon. Let's talk about all the priests that aren't the main priest. Mm-hmm. Like, I'm sorry. Are they on the demon's payroll? It was so weird that they didn't want like, and there is some like, and we'll get to it, but there is some precedent in like the true story and other things of the idea that the Catholic Church doesn't want to like acknowledge that demons exist or things like that. And I'm always like, that's so weird because like all movies that I've ever watched have been like, nah, they're up for it. They just don't want it public. But the fact that they were like gaslighting the hell. Also, I wanted him at one point to tell them to go to the house because if they're so fucking arrogant, go to the house yourself and prove him wrong. But also that like, I just like, even though I'm not Catholic, I still feel weird calling a priest a bitch ass. But that young priest that lied and was like, oh, I think the wheel got stuck. You think the wheel you do not. Like, I can't believe it. Mm-hmm. Like, yeah, go stand in church and say that in front of God. Like, you're lying.
We create our own demons.
Okay. I definitely wrote something about that. Hold on. I think I wrote that that's an obnoxious thing to say, even if there wasn't the actual devil in this movie. But it's really annoying. I'm pretty sure that's what I wrote. But none of them will go to the house. Mm-hmm. Like, none of them are going to the house. And the young priest just being like, I think the wheel locked. Like, I don't know. I don't know what happened. I'm like, I hate you. Like, you are letting him down right now. You keep saying that he's your mentor and you respect him, but he needed you to have his back and you didn't. You would not have survived in the Exorcist movie.
No.
And like, yes, they both died, but I mean, you would have died like a bitch. Also, At least in The Exorcist, that cop's investigating an actual murder and trying to figure out what's happening. This cop just is like real curious about a lot of things. Yes. Nothing to do with him. Like, I'm like, are we paying you as the city to do this stakeout? Or is this like on your own time? It also is one of the things where it never bears fruit. It's not like he runs in at the end and helps anyone.
Yes. Because he's there because they claim that there was a break-in. So he's like, I guess we'll put like extra like surveillance around your house. But like, he's the only one who ever seems to be there.
Yeah, that I noticed that also. I'm like, extra surveillance, it's just you.
And you're not even cop car. I think it's just his regular car.
I had issues with the fact that I felt like this movie was trying to do too much. Like, either they needed to be on an island alone in the sense that like there was no one except a couple visitors. Otherwise, they needed to either pick, and the helper either needed to be the cop or the priest.
Right.
And so it either needed to be like, we never see that priest again except over the phone after he has gotten really sick. And the cop is the one who's like doing the exposition and telling them what's going on. But they had the cop, they had the priest, and they had the business partner and his girlfriend. And I felt like it was way too many side characters. And it could have been shaved down, especially since none of those elements, we'll get to it, but exist in the book or exist in the real story. So it's like, there didn't need to be all of that. Also, I was like, isn't it convenient that his business partner's girlfriend's also a medium?
Yes. So handy to just be friends with a medium.
I did also say that if I ever live in a haunted house or I'm having any kind of ghosty experience, everyone who doubts me, I'm going to say, okay, come spend the night.
Yeah.
Because like, if you do think I'm crazy or you do think it's nothing, then come stay with me for a while. Like, because a lot of them are doing a lot of talking and not a lot of hanging out in the house, witnessing the horror.
Right.
I'm going to talk about Jody's red eyes in the...
That was something we mentioned last episode, that low budget doesn't have to be a bad thing and that I really like low budget. That was a really good example of it. Because it was just two lights. Like, it was the most low budget thing I've ever seen in my life, but it worked. It happened. And I was like, nope, don't like that. Yes, exactly.
I was not expecting it.
Yes.
Also, can we talk about, I wrote cover it when she's like, it's the portal to hell. I was like, bitch, it was covered. You made them uncover it. You cover it. Like, it was covered.
I mean, they had to know it was like, the dog was just going to keep bloodying his paws trying to get at it.
I mean, not if you lock the goddamn basement door. How's the dog getting down there? Like, they had a lot going on, and I just don't think they needed some outside help. Also, apparently the devil makes prank calls because the phone keeps, I was like, well, you're so bored right now, aren't you? You're stealing money and like making prank calls. Like, my God, that dream was yikes. Where she dreams that he killed her daughter with an axe.
Yes. Oh my God.
I wrote, so many people know something strange is happening, but no one is helping. It's just like the amount of people who aren't helping is very frustrating. And I'm just like, why are we giving screen time to all these people not doing anything?
Yeah.
When they all clearly know something is wrong. Like, it also gives like a very weird, like, sacrificial lamb vibe, because I was like, are you intentionally putting these people here? Because like, why will none of you help them when you all seem to think something's going wrong?
Yeah. I don't know. It's a weird town.
Also, something I did not like, in a sense that I was like, shut up, was when the dad and the son who did the murdering looked the same. I was like, what are you saying with that? Are you saying that he's transforming into him? Are you saying like, this isn't something where like it could be a reincarnation? That guy's still alive. He's still alive today. Like, I didn't understand that at all. Like, I was like, I get what you're trying to say, but the logic of it is so weird to me because he looks exactly the same. And it's not like when they do the picture in the paper, it looks similar. It's the same actor. So I'm like, why?
I don't know. Cause like, I feel like it would work better if people kept saying they looked the same and then you looked them up and they didn't, because then I think it would make it clear that it's like you're being possessed by the same spirit, like, or you remind me of like I something other than it's the same actor. you know?
Yeah, because I think like if he starts acting the way the son did, then there's an argument to be made that it would be like, you're kind of reminding me of him, you know, as opposed to like, you look exactly the same. Yeah, but he looked exactly the same when that realtor sold him the house and she didn't say shit.
Say anything. Oh my God, worst town.
Also, I kind of like, we've both seen the remake, which is not good. But one thing that is good is he does spend more time trying to kill them. Whereas, like, I don't think he spent enough time trying to kill them. Like,
yeah.
But then she's able to like wake him up and they immediately get out of the house. And literally in the space of a second, I went, oh no, the dog. And then I went, do not go back for the dog in the same. First of all, why is that dog just not coming?
I don't know. What? Also, they were a block away when he decided to go back for the dog.
Yes.
Which, I mean, I guess was convenient because then like on the way back, he was able to like get all that tar washed off of him. But
no, it was very odd. And it was like, I don't know. I also was like freaked out by the girl because like the actress was kind of smiling in the car. And I was like, are you possessed still? Is that why you're trying to get him to go back for the dog? That dog was so unhelpful. That dog wanted to die.
Yeah.
And then the last thing I wrote was, why even have the priest part? It never came into play. Like the priest and the cop got so much airtime that was just unnecessary.
Could have really tightened this movie up.
Or just had more creepy things.
Yeah.
Like the thing is this movie is very different than a lot of the other hauntings because yes, the house is haunted, but a character is being possessed. And that's very different. Like this movie is haunting / possession, you know? As opposed to just a straight up haunting. Like, yes, at The Conjuring, in the end, the mother is possessed. But the majority of the movie, that's not what's going on. Right. She doesn't get possessed until the Warrens are there.
Yeah. They just hadn't ironed out all the possession wrinkles yet. Possession wrinkles is the name of my dry cleaning business.
Nice.
I think that makes it sound like I put wrinkles in the garment. That's a bad name.
You were immediately put out of business by my dry cleaning service. Wrinkles exorcism. Okay. I mean, everyone survived this movie, so we're fine.
Yep.
Any final thoughts, Bear?
Nope. Tell me a story.
Okay, so I was debating about this because there's so many layers to this story. And I just decided to just go for it, which is different than what I said the last time we talked about this. So it's not going to be a deep dive. It's going to be sort of like the layers of this story. And we're going to get to the fact that this is the most well-known haunted house in America and maybe even the world. And it is also the most controversial story for a lot of reasons. And I will go on record as saying that I believe the family from The Conjuring a lot more than I believe the family from the Amityville Horror. Okay. So if we're talking about like scales, I definitely believe the Conjuring family more. And I kind of believe the London family more. Like if we're doing like a scale of belief, and we'll get to why that is. But we're going to start. I got articles from Live Science, Oxygen, which I love that channel. History versus Hollywood, one of my favorite websites, and All That's Interesting. So on December 18th, 1975, the Lutzes moved into a Dutch colonial house in New York in the Amityville Horror. In Amityville. They didn't call it the Amityville Horror. They would stay there for 28 days, leaving in January of 76. The house at that point did cost $80,000. Like I said, they were newlyweds. They did know the history. And when they left, they would leave all their possessions and never go back.
Fair.
Now, flashback 13 months before they moved in. On November 13th, 1974, Ronald Defoe Jr., henceforth known as Ronald, he was 23 years old and he murdered his entire family. He shot his parents and his siblings in the head with a .35 caliber rifle. Oof. They were all shot in bed. And his parents were Louise and Ronald Sr., 18-year-old Dawn, 13-year-old Allison, 12-year-old Mark, and 9-year-old John Matthew. his father was said to be abusive and his mother was very distant and very uninvolved. Okay. The family had money and he had a lot of
Long Island.
Yeah. They had like a car dealership that they owned.
Wow.
And he had money wise, he had anything he could have wanted. He had a lot of behavioral problems. And we can talk about how much of that was because his father was abusive, how much of that, but he had some real behavioral problems. And the parents' solution to that was to give him whatever he wanted.
Oh, that's the opposite. Opposite of what you do.
So he even had like a, God, what do they call it when it's, he had like a do nothing job at the dealership. And so his father owned it and he had like a job that basically like he got anything he wanted, like stipends, cars, like you name it, but it didn't stop. And he had a massive drug problem, an alcohol problem, again, that they thought could be cured with money.
Right.
So he spent some time at a bar drinking and he was like, I'm trying to call my family and like nobody's answering. And then he goes and he comes back at 6:30 and says he needs help, that his parents have been shot. Well, they go there and everybody's been shot. And his stories quickly fall apart. I'm not getting into all the dumbass things he says. He killed them. And the thing was, he does not say right away anything about possession or anything. He's just trying to be like, I didn't do it. And then years later, because he's still in jail, years later, he's like, my mom did it and then I killed her, or like my dad killed the kids, my mom killed him and then killed herself. It's like my sister Dawn did it. It's all stuff where it's like, okay, whatever. I'm not willing to get into every one of them.
Everybody killed someone,
but not him. Or if he did, it was only the killer. So the murders did take place around 3:15 a.m.
Okay.
And he stood trial on October 14th, and William Weber, important name, was his attorney. And it's when he got to trial that they started saying that he heard voices. Mm-hmm. And they went for an insanity plea. And the prosecutors were like, no, he's just a spoiled drug addict who wanted his family dead. Mm-hmm. Which the jury went with him, and he got 6 concurrent life sentences, 25 to life. So then we flash back forward 13 months and the Lutzes move into this murder house. Mm-hmm. So they said they experienced a lot of different things. They experienced, George said he woke up at 3:15 a.m. every day. Jody was a real imaginary friend that the little girl had. Although what's weird is she spelled it differently than they do in the movie, which I think is such a weird change. Weird. There were cold spots. There was slime that would come from the ceilings. Doors would be ripped off and like open and close. They had a priest come bless the house. That was real. The flies. They did say that like the way they used the flies in the movie was over the top from what they experienced. And George had said like, it was still scary if you'd done the amount of flies we had. It was still a lot of flies. And I think he's right, because anything more than like 5 flies, I would be like, nope. Like the mother would wake up with welts that weren't there. Cabinets would be closing and opening. My personal favorite, that they would like see flashes of like demon faces like out the windows in it. It reminded me a lot of The Exorcist. I was like, nope, no demon faces. And I don't know if you noticed this, but when they do that, when he is in the going towards the house when he's fully possessed, and you see like Jody's form again, and it's like, it looks like a pig. And it's because that's part of how the little girl, Missy, who that was her real name, that's how she described it.
Okay.
And she even drew it, which there's a picture of it in the book, but people have been like, it looks more like a cat. And I'm like, she's a kid.
What are you, an art critic?
So after 28 days, they'd had enough and they just left, and they left all of their possessions. So yeah. Just left him behind. So Jay Anson interviewed them for over 45 hours and had tapes of it. And then he wrote 2 years later, in September of 1977, the Amityville Horror, which is one of the most well-known horror books. Mm-hmm. It sold at this point over 10 million copies. It's a big deal. And it became this huge, famous horror book. So let's get into now the layers of controversy. So I'm going to say things in both directions. Because again, even though I started this off by saying I believe them less, I in no way am at the point where I'm like, I don't believe them at all, because there are things that are very interesting. One thing about the murders themselves that people have always thought was weird is there was no drugging and no sign that he subdued them in any way. And that all signs point that they were all killed in their bed, which means he used that rifle and shot all 6 of them and no one moved or woke up. And weird. That's something that people have found to be really disturbing. Some people have said he must have had an accomplice, but the thing was, he must have had 6 accomplices, right? Because how would no one wake up to even be moved from where they are? It's very weird.
That is weird.
But also there are people who believe that he was possessed, and then there are people that believe that what he did was so horrific, it created a dark energy in the house.
Okay.
So some people think, no, it's bullshit. He just murdered his family, but it did create, you know, some kind of dark energy that he did this, which, to be fair, a lot of horror movies, it's not that like actual hell is in your basement, which they don't say that's from the book. Like they don't, there's liberties. He does, but some people think that kind of murder and betrayal created a dark energy in the house, and that's what they were experiencing because they moved in so quickly after. Okay. So Kathleen and George both took multiple lie detectors and passed every one. Okay. Which I know that's not like in a court of law, but I'm also like, I don't like that a lot. I don't really like that. They also said that, like, when people talk about the book and the movie, George and Kathleen had both said that like they exaggerated, like the people in the book and the, like, it wasn't like that. Like at no point did George try to kill his family. At no point was he possessed. Like it was just like, which, to be honest, I wouldn't need all that. Like the stuff they're describing, I'd be like, no. Like in a real world context, I'd be like, absolutely not. I would need exactly one cabinet to open and shut on its own before me to piece the fuck out. Yeah. Like, so there are people who interviewed them who said they seem genuinely frightened. And there are people who investigated who were like, this is bullshit. And they were like, I can see all these discrepancies between what they're saying and what, like, someone wrote up like a thing of like 100 discrepancies between the book and like what could have happened. And I don't really know, because I didn't want to get into the weeds too much. I don't know how much of these discrepancies are things that like Jay Anson added, that it's like not as much a discrepancy. It's like very like back and forth. The Warrens investigated and they believed it was haunted. They said that it was one of the most haunted houses they'd ever experienced, which we talked about a little bit in the second Conjuring, because so many people believed this was a hoax that it began to tarnish the Warrens' reputation and kind of the Catholic Church, because so many people believe this was a lie. And if the Warrens couldn't tell, so it's really controversial for that reason. And both sons they've been interviewed for documentaries, and they both say that it happened. They just both say that the stepfather and the author exaggerated it, that like they say they exaggerate it, but they're like, no, there was something wrong. And like both of them are like, we lived it. Like there was something very, very wrong in that house. And one of the people in the documentary who annoyed me, and it was just like, it was part of the documentary, was in one of these articles. And it was somebody who was like, well, I mean, does it really matter if it was like these boys believe it? So it's like perception is reality. And I'm like, what a cop out. Like to just be like, oh, they were led to believe that this was like, they're saying they experienced these things. Like, so you're saying it's just like a big lie that they now fully believe, because you're saying like, well, they believe it. They are not lying. And I'm like, I don't know what to say to that. Like it's such weird mental gymnastics. Yeah. Especially since it's not like the parents are telling them you guys were possessed and don't remember it. They're saying we saw these things, and the ages were about the same. So they weren't like super little. Right. The girl was, which is why she isn't involved in a lot of stuff. So this is the part that kind of gets me. And I'll get to that. I have a lot of counterpoint over here. So the belief was that they were in such bad debt that George faked it in order to make money, to get a book deal, to get a film deal. Weber sued them, the lawyer, because he claimed they made up this story, him and the family, over like a bottle of wine. And then they went with a different publishing company than his publishing company. Okay. And like I said, people have said who interviewed them, they seem genuinely frightened, all 5 of them. So let's do some point counterpoint.
Okay.
We already talked about the fact that the Defoe he's still in jail, and there's no real answer to how he killed them all. Like, there's no real answer as to how he was able to kill them all and them not wake up. So that's creepy. Also, I have a really hard time believing that they set all this up in order to get a book deal. And I'll tell you why. Because the Amityville Horror was kind of a first of its kind book. Are you telling me that they bought this house, abandoned it and all of their possessions after 28 days in hopes that in 2 years' time, this author would write a book that would end up becoming a bestseller and be turned into a movie that would spawn multiple sequels? Like, what is he, Nostradamus?
And yeah, also like simultaneously inventing a genre.
Like, I find that to be the stupidest part. Like, the idea that people are saying that he invented this to make money. How did he know he'd make money? It's really easy to say it in retrospect, but also the family from The Conjuring and the family from The Conjuring 2, they didn't make any money.
Right.
So, like, how would you even know that that would be a thing? Also, Weber sued them, and the judge was like, this book seems to have so many like exaggerations that like it's not like a document, like this book isn't like a biography, so like no. Right. And he also said that like he thought it was really sketchy that Weber was claiming as a lawyer that he tried to make some kind of publishing deal, that he's like, that's very weird. So like Weber's case against them, even though it was like at first it was like, oh my God, he's saying he made it up with them, which also, how did they meet? Like, how did this come about? Did he knock on their door and was like, I think he claimed they found him and were like, hey, we want to do this. That also is insane. That's
like playing the long game here.
That's like a Coen Brothers movie. Like that they found the lawyer for the guy who murdered his family in their house and was like, you know what, let's have some wine and create a giant conspiracy. It all is just so crazy that I'm like, it being haunted is less insane to me than really that. Is. So originally people were like, oh, it's a hoax. But then when they went to trial, it was a lot of stuff came out that it made it seem like Weber was just pissed that they didn't go with his publishing company. They didn't sell their rights to his company, that they sold it to Jay Anson. And so it's a lot of things hit his integrity, which made people be like, maybe he's the one who's lying about it being fake because he's mad, which the reason they didn't go with his publishing company was he wanted part of the rights and they didn't want to sell it to him.
I wouldn't either.
So they did to Jay Anson, and like, that's part of it. So people were like, seems like it's a business deal. And also it's weird that you as the lawyer of the guy who murdered was making a business deal with these people for their story.
Yeah, it seems like a conflict of interest to me.
Yes. And I just have a really hard time with all of it. Like with the idea of this, again, it sounds like a movie that would be fun to watch. And then like 10 minutes later, I'd be like, that's all really stupid though. Like that's all really far fetched. Like, so the Sons have said that the Sons have said that the debt thing is bullshit, that they weren't in that much debt, that moving to this house when it was so cheap meant, just like they said in the movie, he was planning on moving his business to the basement because they had so much land and like selling parts of it and using the fact that they had all this land really cheap. And he's like, my parents never had any problems with that. Like that it's been blown out of proportion that they were like, you know, this family living beyond their means. But he's like, no, because the house was super cheap. Also, again, if they were a family that was so beyond their means, it was really the long con because they didn't make any money to this for over 2 years. And they just left all their stuff and never went back. It's insane in the time period, which I just can't get over. I can't get over them leaving all their stuff in hopes that this book would become what it did. Is so crazy to me. So no one else who's ever lived there have said they had any problems except with people trying to come and hang out in their house. Oh, also Weber was found to have been embezzling from his company, which also helped. Yes. There was just a lot of things like that.
So much going on here.
Yes. This is why when I messaged you, I was like, I don't know how much of this story I can even get into, but Let's talk about the house itself. Let's
Okay.
talk about things that I find fucking hilarious to end this on. First of all, you know, they kept doing shots of those half moon windows.
Yeah.
Those were real and really iconic. So one of the first things the new owners did was remove them. So like that, the exterior, the house has been redone. Oh,
Okay.
also, this is a little bit sadder, but they got divorced in the 80s. So they
Oh.
weren't still together when they died, but neither of them came out and was like, this was a lie or anything.
Right.
They both, up until their death, were like, yeah, it got exaggerated. And George used to say, he's like, people can tell there's an element of truth to it. It's why it's endured. Like, it's why people are still connected to it, because there's something there. Even if it's not, he's like, blood never dripped from the ceiling. I never tried to kill my family. Like none of that kind of stuff. So they changed the house. But the thing that absolutely kills me, Rachel, is that the address of the house was 112 Ocean Avenue.
Okay.
And so to keep looky-loos away, they changed the address. They changed it to 108 Ocean Avenue and a couple of things. I know that because the internet exists. So, and secondly, how did you think that would be accomplished? Like, just isn't there like a thing from a Simpsons where they just remove the house numbers and they're like, now they'll never find us? That is this. Like, you just changed the address to 108 rather than 112, and you think no one's going to find the house?
Well, the thing is, 108 is not that far from 112, so it would just be like the next house down.
And considering all the land they have, you would still be in the same area. It's the dumbest thing ever. And it makes me laugh really hard. Like that they thought this was the solution.
The only solution is to tear that house down.
And even then, it's like,
yeah.
But because the thing is that people are always going to want to go look at it. So like I said, this is the most controversial for a lot of the reasons I just said. Like, and it kind of hits on a lot of things that I talk about in the other hauntings, that like, or The Exorcist or anything like that. I mean, obviously, if ghosts and that are true, there's going to be some fakers. So
right.
it doesn't, even if the Amityville Horror was a hoax, it in no way makes me think like all ghosts, like the way that people use a single story to discount something like this is very odd to me, because I'm like, if ghosts exist, there are going to be some people who are going to pretend, but I just find I know I've said it like 7 times, but I can't get over the fact that they left all their stuff. Like, I can't get over the fact that they never went back to the house. And like, it's just a lot to do in order to fake something that might not be successful.
Right.
Which makes me think that the house was haunted. I think it wasn't haunted to the level to which the book and movie want you to believe.
Right.
And I think it was exaggerated. And I think the exaggerating helped people to say it wasn't true.
Right.
Yeah. So, and I honestly, it would be a whole nother podcast thing for me to go through all of the different discrepancies from the movie, the book, and what they say happened, and be like, oh, well, this is what they say, but this is what the book turned it into, what the movie took it into, or like, but as opposed to both the Conjuring movies and The Exorcist, where it's pretty similar, like to what they say happened. It doesn't seem like it's that similar. Okay. But the Amityville Horror is supposed to be one of the best horror books. Like, as far as being really, really scary. I've never read it.
I haven't either.
But
you know,
anyway,
I don't read good books. I only read Flowers in the Attic. That's actually
and other VC Andrews.
Yeah, I was saying
books.
Other VC Andrews books. But I like the idea of people thinking I just read Flowers in the Attic over and over again.
I mostly read nonfiction. Like,
yeah, I mean that too.
I mostly read. I don't read. Yeah, which I guess you could argue this is, but I would say they've all sort of gone on record as saying it's so exaggerated as to not be. But yeah.
So since it's exaggerated, the movie is worse.
The movie's worse. Yeah, the movie's objectively worse. There's a portal to hell in their basement.
Yeah.
I forgot the funniest thing. So the thing that he made, the portal of hell in the book, like the Red Room, that full on existed, and they kept toys in there.
I'm speechless.
Like it was an alcove that was painted red in the basement. And they were just like, we'll just store things in there. Like, and this writer is like, it's the portal to hell.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
I also, though, would not like store things and toys into some weird red alcove in my basement.
No, I wouldn't store toys in the basement. They're just going to get full of spiders. And then the spiders are going to jump out at my kids.
Actually, that happened to me as a child. We stored a lot of things in our basement.
Well, did I ever? I don't know if I ever saw your basement.
You saw my basement when it was redone. I'm talking about my basement when I was a child.
Okay, was it an unfinished basement?
Yeah, before we finished it.
We didn't keep anything in our basement except one chair underneath the light bulb, one broken chair for
my basement
tornadoes.
My basement was quite vast, so when you came down the stairs, if you turned to the left, it was the open part that we eventually finished.
Okay.
And before that, it just had like an air hockey table and like boxes and boxes of toys and things like that. And then we finished it. But then if you went to the left, it was a completely unfinished part that had the water heater in it and toys and was always creepy. And then when you walked in it, there was another part further to your right that had like a whole tool area.
You had a murder room in your basement.
That basement scared me so much. Like I ran when I had to get things. Like I ran and I was like, the vastness of it, like even when it was, especially when that one part was finished, when the other part was not finished, I was definitely like, nope, and I will be running now.
Mm-hmm. The only unfinished basement that doesn't terrify me is my grandmother's, because it's like pretty well lit, actually. Like it is a very bright basement and like remarkably clean for an unfinished basement.
It's the lack of lighting for me in unfinished basements and the fact that the majority of them have those hanging light switches, which means you have to somewhat enter the room before you turn on the light. Like that's it. Like that's the point where I'm like, and now I'm murdered. I will haunt this house.
Yeah, no, I think my grandmother's has like windows like in multiple places. There's like lots of sunlight and there's a light switch. It's also pretty extensive. It's like the whole house. It's got a big basement, but it doesn't freak me out.
Good.
Yeah.
Good for you.
Yeah.
I could just continue to tell stories about basements and cellars that freak me out. It's all of them, by the way. But next week we will be doing episode 11,
which is the original Night of the Living Dead.
One I haven't seen.
It's
very excited.
I've seen it once and I remember liking it. So hopefully this one's a good time.
Another genre
starter.
Yes. I was thinking starter, but I'm like, is there another word?
I think that's why I said it the way I did. I was like, there's got to be a
better way to say that. But I'm excited about it. Make sure to like and follow us on social media and rate and review. And we will see you next week. Goodbye.